Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for the Fostering Success Michigan Toolkit webinar series. We're so pleased to have all of you today. We know that you're joining us in your busy afternoon, and so we look forward to making the most of this hour that we have here with you today. My name is Maddy Day, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Training with the Center for Fostering Success. And in my role, I have the great pleasure of overseeing the Fostering Success Michigan statewide initiative. I'd like to say a quick thank you to our funders, the Kresge Foundation, the Havermill Foundation, and Western Michigan University for making this webinar today possible. A few housekeeping items. Attendees will be in listen-only mode. We do want this to be an interactive webinar. We're hoping that you will ask questions. You can use the chat or questions feature in your sidebar. You can send those questions in at any point in time. We will pause throughout this webinar today to ask questions, to hear from you, and then we'll have some time at the end for any other questions that come in. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, we have provided the Citrix team information there for you to contact. Feel free to contact them regarding any technical difficulties that you may be having. This recording will be available on the Fostering Success Michigan website in our resource library following this broadcast. However, the webcam will not be available in the recording. So for all of you who are with us live today, you get to see our lovely faces. For those of you who are listening to the recording later, you get to hear our lovely voices. So let's welcome our special guest. We have Dr. Christopher Tremblay here with us. Christopher is the Associate Provost for Enrollment Management here at Western Michigan University. Thank you so much for joining us, Christopher.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So Christopher is our resident expert and a true champion for our students from foster care. He will be here to share a lot about the college application process, definitely answer some of those questions. So for any of you who are curious about what that college application process really looks like from the inside, Christopher will be happy to share a little bit about that, answer some questions. Christopher, would you share a little bit about what your role here is at the university?
Sure. Thanks, Maddy. I oversee admissions, financial aid, the registrar's office, and first-year experience, and I'm a 20-year veteran in the field of college admissions. That's where I got my start, so I have reviewed probably thousands of college applications.
So a very seasoned professional here to help us answer those questions. And again, I'll just say that Christopher has been a wonderful champion for our students from foster care, really understanding for all of our underserved and underrepresented students some of the challenges that they experience in this process and really helping us identify ways that we can work with our students more effectively. All right, so today we are here to talk about the FSM College Application Toolkit, your college application easy button. This toolkit is great for students, professionals, and supportive adults. We have a few goals. Again, we just have an hour with you, so we're really going to pack this hour full of great information. Our goals today are to learn how to use the College Application Toolkit on the FSM website. We're going to do a tour of that, and really to increase your knowledge about the college application process and the resources available. Again, please don't forget to use the question or chat feature to the side in your toolbar just to interact with us. We want to hear from you. We would love to hear any questions that you may have. We know that there's probably some students out there and you're right in the college application season. So if you have some questions, we'll do our best to answer. And if you're a professional, we really want to be able to provide some technical assistance to you in the short time that we have. So as we jump into this issue at hand today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what some of the data says, particularly around the challenges faced by young people who experience foster care in getting to college. And here we really see that research indicates that 70% of youth aging out of foster care have a desire to go to college. But when it comes to those students who persist to enrollment, we see a huge disparity. One thing to note here is, these studies, these numbers come from studies that are about 10 years old. And so while we believe that progress has been made through campus support programs that we have here in Michigan and across the country, we don't yet have the data to validate that. But we do really believe that with our campus support efforts, with champions, both here in Michigan And across the country, we have made great strides in really boosting that number of 20% up, though we know that there's just this persistent lag behind for our students from foster care, which is why we're here to talk with you all today. All right, so a couple issues really come to the forefront when we speak to barriers that are present for our students who've experienced foster care as they persist through the education to career pipeline. One of the first ones is academic preparedness. And this is, I think an issue that we struggle with. I know, Christopher, we talked about this earlier, not just with our students from foster care, but really, across the board general population students as well. Here we really see that for our students who experienced foster care, about 52% of them have experienced or read a grade level below compared to 38% overall. Christopher, could you tell us a little bit about what the implications for academic preparedness are for students as they are seeking to go to college, and even those who persist and end up on a college campus?
Sure. Yep. The first one is just that students who aren't as prepared are going to end up taking more remedial courses,
Sure.
which could prolong their time to graduation and are courses that they have to pay for. An alternative for students who might not be prepared for entrance into a four-year school would be, again, to consider a two-year community college. So,
Sure.
Students of all different levels of preparedness do still have options. They just may have some additional hurdles to overcome along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. We have many students who, aspire to get a bachelor's degree, but feel like if they're not ready to make that move, that might be unattainable. But I think just bringing up that community college is a great first step. We have wonderful resources. I know in our last webinar, we talked about the resource of TIP that many students are eligible for that helps to cover that cost of tuition at a community college for those first 2 years. So really just a great reminder that you can persist onto your four-year degree if maybe you're not quite prepared for that four-year institution. So going back in time here. All right. So our next issue that we really see, and this is one that I think will resonate with all of us who are working with young people who experience foster care, and that's the issue of school stability. And we see this high number of young people who are in foster care moving schools, and really, we know that through just that experience that we see with our students, they move schools fairly frequently, they move mid-year, and the challenges that presents to graduating on time, the challenges that presents to maintaining the credits that they have accrued, transferring those high school records, and just really even, beyond some of the academic issues that they may face, just sort of that sense of identity, that feeling of I can do this, I belong here, becomes much more challenged as students move through these different placements and these different school settings. Fortunately, we do have some policies here in Michigan through McKinney-Vento that can help to mitigate some of those factors of school stability, helping students stay in their home school. We're not going to talk about those here today, but we do want to bring it up as, a challenge that we know that students face. And just for our professionals out there, particularly our educators who may not be as savvy about the in and outs of child welfare, that this would be an area where, you can really partner with your students to help them, stay stable and really understand what those credits are, make sure that those credits transfer. We know that making sure that students have the right credits, is so imperative to being able to get into school and meeting those admission requirements. So we're going to jump in, and we have about 4 questions here for Christopher before we look at our toolkit. Again, we hope that for all of you out there listening, that you're asking questions. We will start reading some of those questions as they come in. And if there's anything that doesn't make sense, or you hear us say and you want to learn more about, those would be great opportunities for you to send in questions to us. So Christopher, first question, Get us started. When should a student start preparing for the college application process?
Sure. Thanks, Maddy. So there really is no time frame that says it's too early to start the process. We are seeing more and more students starting this process in the middle school years, but most students will start seeing in their first year of high school.
Okay.
So freshman year is a good time to start exploring, maybe thinking about what they might want to study, exploring college websites, and then as they transition, sophomore, junior year, they should really start making some visits to college campuses that they might be interested in applying to, because that gives them a chance to see the campus and see if it's a fit for who they are. So, I would say anytime, at the beginning of the high school time frame is ideal. Now, that doesn't mean that a student who is in their junior, senior year, it's not too late. They're just going to have more of a condensed timeline to accomplish some of those steps in order to get ready to apply.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point. So I hear you saying that, we'd always love to start students thinking about college as early as possible. I know you've said in the past, even middle school is a great age just to kind of get that spark going, get that, start planting those seeds. But really starting in freshman year, that's kind of when the college going process begins. And I think, a lot of our students may not be thinking about that when they enter high school. They may be, focused on just kind of making that transition into high school, exploring different electives that are there. But that's where those professionals, those supportive adults in their life can kind of come alongside and maybe help do some of that guidance. So, when we start to think about exploring what you might want to do, and who you are, what are some ideas that maybe would be helpful for students as they explore, what college could look like or what they want to study or even job prospects?
Sure. First and foremost, students looking at doing inventories related to their values and their interests. Those are often available online or in person. And we know that there are tools like career cruising that are being used here in Michigan and in other states to help students through that exploration process. But also even just reviewing a list of what majors a college offers, right? Because we might call something one thing and a student may not realize that's something unique, plus it exposes them to the types of majors that would lead to different careers that they may have an interest in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so if a student, didn't even know what majors are out there, would they go to like a college website to find that information, to find what majors they have? Where would they go to find that?
Yep. Typically on a college's website, they would look for the word academics. And that's where majors are going to be, listed. Typically, they're categorized alphabetically. Sometimes they're categorized by how the university or college is organized by a theme, like you might see all of your business programs or all of your engineering programs grouped. A student should be able to figure that out, though, as they're looking at a list like that.
So, I hear you saying some of those first steps are really just going to be exploration. Just kind of, taking that time, and it sounds like it will maybe take some time to, really hear or to really understand what's out there, think more introspectively, and then using some of those tools that are available. So, as our students maybe progress through high school, I know for many of our students from foster care, the challenges that life presents may not make it possible for them to start thinking about college or be supported to really do that exploration, until their sophomore year, we hope, but for many, their junior or senior year. So what would you say are, really those big first steps that everybody should take? Let's say you're at the, right now, middle of your junior year. What should you be doing that can kind of jumpstart that process to college application?
Right. So doing some online searches, reviewing college and university websites, both the admissions criteria to get in, how to schedule a campus visit, again, what are their academic offerings. And then you can also use, just general online search tools, whether it's something offered like by the College Board that would provide resources and links and timelines and checklists, or again, the toolkit that you've provided provides a great outline for what should be done between freshman and in senior year. But again, you want to do all of your research before you apply for college, apply for admission, but then you want that research to continue because there's going to be more things that you discover, and once you're admitted, then that's where you really need to go deeper into your research and finding out more specific details for what that school can offer you.
Awesome. So, really putting those pieces of what am I interested in, what schools might align with that, what do I need to get into those schools, and then, what are really the pieces of that process, that step for college application. That's fantastic. And we are going to show later on when we reference the College Application Toolkit, we are actually going to be able to show, starting from freshman year through senior year, some of those steps, but just want to underscore how important it is for students to really kind of get in there early, to be able to start that exploration early. It's going to give them, their best shot at finding the school that is probably the best fit for them. So our next question, what are some of the common challenges, and I know you probably know this very well after, over 1,000 plus I'm sure more applications that you've read, but some of those common challenges that students that face students during the admissions process.
Sure. Yep, there are plenty of them. The first one I would say would be is just getting started. The students often might procrastinate or might be intimidated by the online application systems because every school may use a different system, and so actually creating the account that would allow the online application to be completed is one. I think the second major challenge is that they get overwhelmed by all of the steps that are involved. You've got to fill out the online application. You've got to make sure you have your transcript sent. Did you have your test score sent? Is there a personal statement or an essay required? And so my recommendation for how to help students with those challenges is to really break them down into much smaller steps and maybe set goals by a certain timeline. Because again, if a student is applying to 3 to 4 colleges, which is what is the national average and really what's recommended, students will have to finish one and then start the next one. And so I think even once they get the first application filed, that can feel like a sense of accomplishment and that they can do it, and it probably wasn't as intimidating as, as they thought. I think the other challenge can often be the application fee. Colleges charge $40 to $75 per application. However, there are fee waivers available, which I know we'll talk about. But I never want a student to rule out applying to college because they can't pay the application fee, because there are ways that can be addressed if you can demonstrate that there is financial need for that student or for that family.
So I loved what you said about, sometimes the biggest challenge is just getting started. I think we can all relate to that, whether we're professionals or students. Just that hurdle of getting started can just kind of seem daunting. Where do we go? How do we get there? Do you have some advice, if you're a student, and they're kind of like, oh, getting started, kind of getting over that hurdle, or if you're a professional and you're supporting a student, any advice?
Well, I think the first thing is to first get into the student's mind on what do they think is required to apply to that college. So first get a sense, because I think most students make it bigger than it really is. Right? Because there's this mystery behind applying to college, and somebody else gets to make the decision on whether or not I get in or not. So I think that would be the first step, is kind of finding out what are the students' perceptions. The second would be, as a professional, I would pick a college or university. It doesn't have to be any one in particular, but print off the admission requirements, or what are the steps to apply, and maybe review that with the student as an example for that, and or ask the student to make a list of, what will it take to apply to that college, and then maybe use that to guide their timeline, and give them a couple of tasks to do every day, to prepare for it.
So really kind of, the second challenge that you said is how overwhelming all of the different pieces can be. So that strategy of breaking down those pieces into small chunks, chipping away at it a little bit every day. I think it's so important, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, that this is where that good partnership with the professionals can just be so crucial. And so again, we'll talk about who some of those people are in a little bit, but I think, for our students out there who are listening, for, our professionals out there who are listening, understanding that there is a little bit of this, like, the mystery of college, and it doesn't have to be quite a mystery, just knowing that you can print off the application and read through it before you have to go online. Just can, take some of that mystery out of it. So that's great. The other thing that you mentioned, and it's so important, is the tuition waiver, or not the tuition waiver, my apologies, the application waiver piece. And, really that this application, it costs money. And how much on average did you say?
It can be from $40 to $75 per application.
Okay, so that's no small chunk of change, particularly for our students who are in foster care. This presents a challenge, and I know one of the things that we have talked about is that I believe the organization is NACAC.
Yep.
That has that tuition waiver, and I believe we have a slide that links people directly to this. We will also have this link here in our College Application Toolkit, so when we go through that we can show you where that is. But if you can tell me a little bit about what this provides and how a student may access this.
Sure. Yep. So this fee waiver form was created by the National Association for College Admission Counseling, specifically to help any student who was in a financial situation where they had demonstrated need and could not afford to pay the application fee. So a professional fills this out and validates that indeed that need exists, and then that student can either upload that or send it directly to the colleges and universities that they're applying, and then we will accept it and waive the application fee so that is not a barrier to pursuing a college education.
Wonderful. And again, really underscoring that financial need, financial concerns shouldn't be the barrier that keeps you from applying to college, shouldn't be the barrier that keeps you from choosing the college that you feel is right for you. There's lots of resources. We did have earlier this fall, we had our financial aid toolkit webinar, so if you're wondering about all the pieces of financial aid, you can reference that. It's available on our website, fosteringsuccessmichigan.com. So with this financial waiver, professionals that can fill this out, would that be a high school counselor, educators in the school, administrators?
Yeah,
okay.
Typically for those that would have access to that, and there's different options on the form, and
Wonderful.
requires the signature, so that way we just have confirmation that, again, the student didn't fill out the form
Sure.
For themselves. So just, again, a third-party validation.
Perfect. And it does say there on the NACAC website, it does list students who are placed in foster care, students who are wards of the state, right on there. So for anybody that is concerned that maybe this doesn't apply to our students, it absolutely does. Wonderful. All right, so one of the most critical pieces that we see that really kind of, creates some anxiety for our students is this essay, this college essay. So how important is the essay? And, can you talk to maybe how a student can go about writing this essay and maybe what to include?
Sure. So first of all, not every college or university requires an essay to apply for admission.
Okay.
So that's the first research a student needs to do, is to find out if that's a requirement. The next step would be, once you know if there's an essay, is to first of all dissect the question. And first of all evaluate it. Is it an academic question or is it more of a personal statement question? Or it could be a hybrid of the two. And then dissect the question to find out, again, what are they actually looking for?
Okay.
And then a student also needs to follow the directions in terms of, length, making sure they're hitting the topic, what's the format. Typically, again, there'll be a word count, provided. And then they should, after they've written it, they should also put it aside for a day and then maybe come back to it, reread the question. But also have another person proofread the essay. Because oftentimes when we're working so closely with our own work, we fill in different words that we thought were there, and also don't rely on spell check that the computer provides.
Oh, I know.
And so again, by having somebody else, review it, that's not cheating, that's just being smart.
Absolutely.
By having all of that. So those would be my thoughts and recommendations related to the to the essay for any college that does require it.
Yeah, so it sounds like the essay is a piece that, students really do need to start thinking ahead about. This isn't the night before the application's due, you don't want to be writing your essay. And I love, having a couple people review it. I know I am very spell check dependent, but spell check doesn't cover all of those grammatical errors and different things, so highly recommend using those professionals around you, asking other people to read your essay just to kind of give you feedback. One thing, we talk to our students who experience foster care a lot about how they can maybe explain to people who aren't maybe as familiar with the experience of foster care about some of the implications that that's had on their academic preparedness. Again, seeing many of our students have transferred schools many times, and that if you don't have some explanation about why that was, it can look questionable. Why were you moving schools all these different places?
Right.
Why did you have to retake this class and all these different things? So we often talk to our students and explain to them that they can share some of those resilience factors in their essay. Any advice or thoughts from you on how a student may go about including some of that piece of their story from foster care into the essay that will really help to strengthen their application?
Sure. So first and foremost, a lot depends on what the essay topic is.
Okay.
Again, it may not be appropriate in all types of essays to weave that in. Whether that's an essay is required or not, a personal statement can also be provided to every college a student applies for if they want to share part of their journey or their story, because they feel like that helps put into context some of those situations that you talked about. So I would say that, again, they should take a look at the question and figure out if there's a way, again, if the essay does allow for some personal storytelling, then and it fits, then that can work. The other exercise I would encourage any professional in working with a student to work on their essay would be to have a brainstorming session with the student on the essay question. Many times students can articulate verbally what they might put in a paper, but they might get stuck when they get ready to go to type it.
Sure.
And so, having the student, kind of brainstorm and make some notes might kind of jumpstart their passion for writing the essay, if you can have a conversation about it. And then the student would then kind of have that to start with.
Yeah. And, I know you're very focused on college applications. I'm sure, though, you have some expertise on scholarships as well. Do you see essays being used for scholarships as well?
Yes. There's no question that essays are very much, probably you'll see it more on the scholarship side than you would for college admissions or at scholarship competitions. And again, the same principles, though, apply. Again, make sure you're following the directions and getting it in on time and making sure that it's polished. Because again, in either case, whether you're applying for admission or a scholarship, your essay is representing who you are, and you want to give a good first impression. Especially if you're trying to get something out of it, which would either mean being admitted or receiving some sort of funding.
Yeah, and really, I think that's a great point to just underscore. Your essay really is representing who you are, and for our students, it's your opportunity to really put that face and show those folks that are reading thousands of applications every year that you are dedicated to this, that you're committed to yourself as a student and really moving into that next step of college, post-secondary education. Wonderful. All right, so our next question, this is going to be our last question before we go to the toolkit, really speaks to this support. So what are other ways that students can engage to receive support through the admissions process?
Yep, absolutely. There are many individuals who can help students during this stage. First and foremost, I always encourage students to build a relationship with their admissions representatives.
Great.
These might be the representatives that they meet during a high school visit or a college fair, and if they haven't met that person because maybe the college is far away or they haven't connected, they can certainly locate that person's email address and just send an introductory email and just say, I'm interested in your school, but I also had some questions, wondered if you might be able to help me. That's what admissions representatives are, designed to do, help any student who wants to navigate, that process.
Awesome.
And that admissions representative may or may not be involved in the admissions decision.
Okay.
But that admissions representative would never put themselves in a position where, it could create an awkward situation for that student because they want to look out for the student's best interest.
Sure.
The next individual would be all of our high school counselors. Our school counselors who are working in, it could be at middle school or in high school, are a tremendous resource. Many of them have gone through training that's been provided by the Michigan College Access Network.
Yeah, it's a wonderful training.
And they have experience. They've navigated other students through the process, from applying to college to looking at financial aid offers to making that final decision. So they're another opportunity. Another group would be our local college access networks, or community-based organizations that provide college advisors, whether those be in those organizations, and college advisors are also in the high schools now, especially here in Michigan. But those are support systems that, again, also can provide additional community resources, but also have the basic foundation for what it takes for a student and the steps that they need to take.
That's fantastic. I know this to me is such a crucial question because many of our students who are in foster care, they're interacting with caseworkers, they're interacting with DHHS ed planners, Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative coordinators, all amazing supportive folks, but they are not necessarily education folks. They're not necessarily higher education folks. And so really knowing who they can go to on that education side who can really help support them is just so crucial. One thing, and I know we have talked about this, Michigan has just made great strides in educating their high school counselors in a variety of ways, but particularly about the college application process, the college access process. And one of the things when we talk to students and we say, oh, go talk with your high school counselor, they hear that word counselor and they get a little worried, I don't want to talk to another counselor, I don't want to have to, talk about all the stuff with foster care, I maybe have another therapist or I'm not interested in that. Sure. So what is that role that high school counselors can play to support students, while they're in school through that education journey, and then particularly with this college application process?
Yeah, absolutely. A high school counselor does have a lot of responsibilities, and they are there to help students at any point who need assistance. But in particular, we know that they can play a critical role in helping students. For example, just in the very basic beginning, when a student doesn't know maybe why they want to go to college or what they should study in college. And again, going back to that inventory and looking at and evaluating values. So again, a counselor would be trained and would have time to work with a student in that. In terms of the admissions process specifically, again, helping that student maybe set up a campus tour, or helping that student find colleges that might fit what they're interested in. Because a lot of work goes into making sure that the counselors know the types of programs and majors and environments and experiences that are offered on the different college campuses. And many counselors will also do their own visits to colleges to kind of add information to their own toolkit. But, a student should never be intimidated by approaching their school counselor, and even if they have the word counselor in their title, they really are, again, a resource to help them. And again, they're connected to other resources. So even if they don't know the answer, they will know, who to connect the student to. And they've also built relationships with the college admissions representatives. So they could pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this student I'm working with. Can you give some advice, or what resources do you have? And they can play that role on behalf of the student. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And, it's such a great point that our people resources are connected to our resources. So we have, paper and we have websites and all these great things, but we have our people resources, and they really activate those resources. I know here, at FSM, we get calls every year from high school counselors and, just really inquiring what resources are available, what does this mean, what does that mean, doing a lot of that work, on the students' behalf, making sure that they can help their students, in every way possible. Another group that you mentioned is the College Advising Corps. I know here in Michigan we have the Michigan College Advising Corps, and then the Michigan College Access Network also has their Advise Me, Advise Michigan program. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that those folks take on?
Sure. Yeah, they are placed throughout Michigan, and they are near peers, so they're recent college graduates who've gone through an extensive training over the summer and are really positioned to complement what a high school counselor would do. And again, they're additional resource to help that student when they don't know what to do next, or they've applied and they haven't heard back, or how do I get started with filing the the FAFSA for federal student aid. So they're there every step of the way to respond to inquiries, but also to facilitate students moving through the process.
Yes.
Because again, it starts with the college application process.
Yeah, and so that to me ties directly back into those pieces of really breaking that college application process down. That second big hurdle or challenge that you said many students have, and that those college advisors can really be there to walk with a student just step by step through that process. And I think it's wonderful the fact that they are recent graduates. They're I know we have presented to many of them through their trainings on the just specific needs that students from foster care have. They're all just so wonderful and excited to engage, and I think really bring that energy, and also can kind of provide that, okay, so I was just on a college campus type of feel, they can really tell you what is it really like, and hopefully help students feel like college is for them, and that piece of belonging, when you can see somebody who is maybe just a few years ahead of you. I think college looks much more attainable.
Right. Yep.
Wonderful. All right. We have had a few questions come in. One question, and this might be a harder question, but since we're talking about the different people and professionals that can be supportive to this process of college admissions, Kaylee from Michigan asked, how might the college application be different for a student who's coming into college or applying to college with an IEP or a 504 plan? And I don't know if you're able to answer this, or maybe even what departments on campus, offices on campus that could be supportive to this student.
Right. Yep. Certainly, most colleges and universities would welcome students who have an IEP or a 504 plan to, apply. The student still has to meet the regular admission requirements in most cases, although it's important to check with each college or university that a student is applying to. But then, engaging with typically, disabilities disabilities office for students with intellectual disabilities would be important to find out what kind of support a student might need who has that plan, and really what resources does that college or university provide for that student to be successful. And I think it's very easy to evaluate each college and university's response because you can take a look at what resources they do provide or they don't have the ability to provide. Because it's not required by state law, at least in Michigan, but obviously it's highly encouraged because we want students of all types of backgrounds to be able to pursue college and be successful at it. So that's really done on a case-by-case individual basis in terms of looking at where students at and where they need to be in order to be able to handle the expectations that the faculty are going to present.
Yeah, and I know in working with some of the community colleges here in Michigan that they also will work sometimes to help facilitate some testing. So if a student maybe, says, I'm pretty sure I, have a learning disability, but I've never really been tested, they can, help to facilitate some of that testing. This would be another place where if a student is from foster care and they might need to pay for some testing, they can go and they can talk with their caseworker, maybe look at youth and transition funds to help pay for some of that testing. But, it's a challenge, but I like what you said about it's part of the evaluation process of, is this institution going to be the best for me?
Right.
And as students are doing that exploration, this is absolutely going to be one of the pieces that they want to take into account. And I would say, similarly, our students from foster care are probably also looking at, does a school have a campus-based support program?
Right.
Is there going to be a community there who is really there to promote a positive identity as a young person who's had that experience in foster care? That's another, big piece that we see a lot of students looking for. One other question, and this is maybe going to speak to some transfer elements, but I think would be helpful, and then we're going to jump into the toolkit. This is from Armando from Los Angeles Harbor College, and Armando asks, so they're in the work of starting a campus-based support program, but they're wanting to know what they can do to help students as they transfer to a four-year school. So that application from a two-year to a four-year school, and maybe just some ideas that you have as far as how, if you are in a supportive role at a two-year, how you might help that student with their application process.
Sure. Yep. Thanks for your question. I think first and foremost would be building a relationship with the colleges and universities where your students are going to be applying, or at least, again, making contact with them. Most four-year schools will have, websites and web resources that, again, outline the steps for transferring. The most important question when it comes time to transfer from a two-year to four-year school is the transfer of credits.
Sure.
Because all of us want to maximize the student's time and financial investment and want every credit to transfer. And so most colleges and universities have an online system now where you can look up each course by course to make sure that it transfers.
That's great.
But also doing some research to find out what kind of transition programs do those four-year schools offer. So for example, at Western Michigan University, we have a transfer transition program, which is a one-day kind of orientation program for transfer students. So again, you want to research and find out, how does that student make a smooth transition? And then do they also offer any kind of support within the first semester? So a lot of colleges and universities have a first-year seminar or a first-year experience program, and many schools are now offering a kind of a transfer student experience.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Or some programming within that first semester to help students. So again, those would be some of the things that I would look for, as well as try to evaluate what's available.
Yeah, so really, again, it's, making sure that you can have, I kind of call it the warm handoff. It's not just here's somebody's number, go check. It's, here's Christopher, give him a call. He's going to be able to, talk you through those steps and maybe point you in the right direction for some of the other pieces to consider. That's wonderful. Thank you, Armando, for asking that question. All right, so we are now going to go and do a review of the College Application Toolkit. It's going to be a fairly short review, but we're excited to be able to share it with all of you, really to be able to, kind of show all of these pieces of college application in one space. What we have, in an effort to really condense all of the great resources that we have, and really to be able to maximize your time, we've created these toolkits. And so these toolkits, we've been doing webinars on them, but they are available, of course, at our website, fosteringsuccessmichigan.com. You can find them. You can type in College Application Toolkit right into the main search bar, and you're going to be able to find these toolkits here. This toolkit that we have today provides a nice overview. You'll see just, at the very top, some of the information that we shared at the beginning of this webinar in general about some of the outcomes and experiences that research shares with us about the experience for students from foster care as they move to and through college. Really echoing a lot of what Christopher said, and it's just, wonderful that you've been able to come with us, come here and do this webinar with us today, because I think it really kind of brings to life a lot of the text on here. We understand that this is a very dense toolkit, and, we know that with a lot of text, sometimes that can be overwhelming, so that we hope that you can kind of take this piece by piece. Know that there's a lot of links within this toolkit. Some of these links will go to other sites internally within the FSM website. Some of them will go to external external links so that you can kind of continue to do that exploration. But hopefully this will kind of walk any student or professional through all of those little pieces. Of course, the practical pieces of understanding what you actually will need to get in, like a college essay, taking ACTs or SATs, but also really what might be happening for our students who've experienced foster care as they're moving from freshman year into their senior year and through this college application process. So a couple things that I want to, really just highlight here. You really spoke about the importance of meeting with the high school counselor, and I just can't say enough how important our high school counselors are. We know that they, have many, many students that they need to meet with, but they're just such a huge resource for our students. And so if you can meet with your high school counselors early and often, that's definitely recommended. We also want to just point out that there's many TRIO programs across the state of Michigan that are pre-college programs. There's also some college programs that offer support to students who've experienced foster care and also other underserved and underrepresented students that really can help them along this way of their college application process. So definitely check out the TRIO programs. We have an e-brief that we have done. Fostering Success Michigan has that available, and this link here can take you directly to that e-brief. We won't go there now, but if you're looking to see, is there a TRIO program, maybe an Upward Bound program, an Education Talent Search program in your area, they're all available there. So as we scroll through from freshman year into sophomore year, this is really where things start to become much more critical, I would say. And some of that exploration, Christopher did a great job talking about majors and some of those things that you may be interested in, and kind of finding that spark. And I think it's so important, that we really talk with our students about what gets them excited. Another element here is practice taking the SAT or ACT. We know that the standardized tests can be kind of scary, but they also play, a critical role for some of the applications. And Christopher, I wonder if you can share a little bit about the SAT, ACT, and
Sure.
a little bit more about them.
Yep. So for decades, the SAT and ACT have been tests that have been considered in the college admissions process, and still to this day they are. Although we are seeing a growing trend in probably close to 900 colleges and universities across the country who have gone test optional, where a standardized test is not required for admission, but you might still submit it to have on file. But these tests are, again, one factor among many designed to tell us, again, a student's level of knowledge and skill, based on the standardized tests. But again, it's important for the student to do their research to find out if the school accepts an ACT or SAT or both. Most schools today would offer, either one.
Okay.
But it does vary, and that's a part of that research that is important for students who don't score an ACT or an SAT high enough to gain admission. Many times then they can enroll at the community college, and as long as they usually complete, the 1 to 2 years of college coursework, can then, and they do well academically with their grades, can then transfer without having to look at the ACT or SAT.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Many cases, a student may have test anxiety, or there may be other factors that are affecting that. So there still is a different route that they could choose if that becomes a barrier in the beginning.
Yeah. So. And, I thank you for bringing that up, because I know for so many students, especially if they're moving, being ready, feeling ready to take the ACT or SAT is something that is just in and of itself a barrier. Being able to find somebody to take you if your school doesn't offer it, that's another barrier. And that knowing that you can go to a community college and you can do some coursework there that then can transfer so that you're really not challenged with taking the ACT or SAT is a great thing to know. One other thing, I mentioned youth in transition funds earlier. For our students who experience foster care, they are able to access youth in transition, or YIT, funds to help pay for any of the practice courses, or even a test fee for the ACT or SAT. So really important for students to know that there's resources out there to help pay for some of those things that are going to be required of them at certain parts of this process of college application. Just one more quick thing I want to call folks to is that the Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative and Foster Club, those are both organizations that are really there to help promote a community for students, promote resources available for students as they are working toward their education goals. So we want to give them both a shout out and just encourage folks to check out both of those organizations and learn a little bit more about how they can support the students. So as we move into our junior year, so this is really where kind of doing that work and activating some of those research pieces becomes so important. And here's where we know that a lot of students are really kind of digging in deep. They're really starting to think about what are going to be some of those. You mentioned, I think 3 or 4 is the average number of schools that students apply to, and so some of those factors that they may take in. We know campus-based support programs are definitely going to be a big factor. Particularly here in Michigan, we're really fortunate to have 14 campus-based support programs specifically for students who've experienced foster care. We have another additional 5 and growing number of designated campus champions. Those are professionals on a college campus who are willing to be support to students, and so really connecting with those folks. And this might also be a time where hopefully you're doing some campus tours. In your opinion, what would maybe be some of the important questions that students would want to ask when they're doing those campus tours?
Yep, so definitely the campus tour is a great way to learn a lot of information. I would say what kind of academic support is available, whether it be tutoring or supplemental instruction, and also kind of getting a feel for what is the classroom environment like. Usually you'll get to see 1 or 2 classrooms on a campus tour, so it gives you a sense of that community. So those would be some of the academic resources. I would also have a student inquire about, what kind of extracurricular activities, student clubs, organizations, leadership organizations and programs, so that they know outside of the classroom what they can be engaged in and start building their skills as they do that.
Wonderful. Those are great questions, and I think for students to feel like it's okay to ask those questions that they have, and I know some of our campus-based support programs have offered in the past to pair up for students to visit those programs when they're doing a campus tour. So make sure, if you want to get to know, maybe visit the campus coach. You can really, make the most of those campus tours.
Yep.
All right, so going into our senior year, there's lots of activities I know in the senior year, and we have hit on a lot of those really important ones earlier in this webinar, and we'll definitely invite you to take a look at this. Deadlines are so important, making sure that students really hit those deadlines, that they're aware of those deadlines, and then I believe we have here, and I have to look for it again, the waiver for the college application is right down here. Yeah. You can check out, this is a direct link to the NACAC website where they have the waiver, and you can follow that process there. Such a huge resource for our students to know about, and for any professionals out there, we encourage you to look at that and think about what students you may know that this waiver might be helpful for, and tell those students about it, so that if some of those students are worried, financial aid, I don't know if I can afford it, that they know that at least the college application isn't a barrier. I do want to jump to financial aid and just say a quick again, a plug for our financial aid toolkit that we did, and then underscore what Christopher has said earlier, that really the financial barrier should not be the barrier to choosing the school that's right for you. We can't say it enough. It's so important. We know that there's lots of financial resources for our students who experience foster care. One thing that I want to touch on is what to do after you've been accepted. And then we know for our students, the application process doesn't just stop with acceptance. I mean, it's a great day and we want you to celebrate, and if you call us, we'd celebrate with you. But what should you do afterward?
Right. Yep. So once a student has been admitted, typically those next steps are to pay an admissions or an enrollment deposit. And then also to sign up for new student orientation, and then also to sign up for housing or where they're going to live on campus. Once a student has made a decision on where they're going, they should cancel their admission at other schools that they've applied to.
Okay.
Not many students think about doing that.
Sure, yeah. No.
But then that lets the other schools know you've made a decision, and they will take you off of their contact list, and you can continue on working with the school that you're planning to enroll in. And you have students have until May 1st to make a decision. That's a common reply date, and that allows a student to be able to compare all of their financial aid packages, which are typically mailed in March by most colleges and universities.
Okay, great. So absolutely making sure that you finish that whole process, that application doesn't just stop with the acceptance letter. You want to make sure that you know those deadlines for orientation, for, again, completing the FAFSA, doing all those good things, and then letting those schools know if you are going to accept or decline. Such a huge part of the process. All right, so that is our College Application Toolkit. We're going to go back to our presentation, and really quick, while we wait for some other questions to come in, and we may have a few questions that take us just a little bit over today, because we want to get your questions answered. I know that Christopher has a very exciting personal project that he's working on. Fostering Success Michigan is very much in the business of finding new and innovative strategies to inspire and engage our students. And so, Christopher, if you want to share a little bit about your project, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. So I spent the last year developing and designing a card game called Getting In, which mimics the college application process and really makes it a fun way for students to see all of the pieces that they have to do to compile their application. And, the game has some realistic kind of things that may happen, like you miss a deadline and what happens with that, or something else interrupts your process. And so it's really authentically representing what the process is, and that'll be hopefully launched on Kickstarter early in 2016. Any profits from the card game will go back into a student scholarship fund.
That's fantastic. So, again, it's just so exciting, one, to have you here because you're such a wonderful expert and wealth of information, but two, what a great resource that's being developed. I know I've had a chance to play the game and see the game, and I'm a huge fan. So you'll hear more from Fostering Success Michigan about this when it's available. But anything that can really make this process tangible for our students, I think it takes some of that mystery out of it and really helps to lower some of the anxiety and really just get students excited and engaged.
Absolutely.
So awesome. All right, so quick question we have here from Sunday, who asks, do you have any advice for older youth, 24 plus maybe, with experience in foster care, who are considering going into higher education for the first time, and are there any resources for them? So, in your thoughts, what do you think?
Sure. Yeah, we continually try to figure out how to best serve, students who might not fit the traditional pipeline. We call them contemporary students.
Okay, I like that, contemporary students.
So they're growing in size and also have interests in continuing their education. The first thing would be to see if they're interested in going to college, maybe starting by taking one class.
Okay.
We have a lot of non-degree statuses that allow a student to do that. The unfortunate thing about non-degree is that there's not financial aid available.
Okay.
But it's also just a nice way to see for a student, are they really ready for this, and do they understand the rigor?
Sure.
But you could also do that at a community college, and the cost would be less.
Yeah.
In many cases, we will work one-on-one with students who, are a contemporary student who, again, might be intimidated by being in a class with 17, 18-year-olds, but we can also recommend classes. They can also take online classes, which might be another option for them. But certainly they are welcome on, on college campuses, and they're growing in size. And so I think that as we continue to see higher education evolve, they're in the classrooms just like everyone else is, and have the same dreams and pursuits, and we want to help them in the same way.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, because I think it's so important that we encourage students of all ages really to engage in higher education. One other resource that I will point you to, and you can find more information again on the Fostering Success Michigan website, is the Fostering Futures Scholarship. It's a new scholarship here in Michigan that's available through the Student Scholarships and Grants Office. Their application, I believe, will open late spring, usually through early July, and that allows, I believe it's up to $3,000 a year if you have unmet need, for anybody who has been in foster care on or after their 13th birthday for even one day, and there's no upper age limit. So it's a pretty unique scholarship in this world. So if you are older, this would be a scholarship that you'd absolutely want to check out. All right. Well, I mean, given that signal that it is time for us to come to a close, we do have a few poll questions that we want to ask for folks. And so we're going to open up some of our polls here. Our first poll is, how likely is it that you will visit the FSM website and utilize the College Application Toolkit? And you can go ahead and just select your response right now. It looks like we're seeing some highly likely, likely, not sure, some highly unlikely. And, we hope that this toolkit is a great resource for you. We hope that you find a lot of great information. But we also understand that for some of you, there may be other places that are more valuable on the website, or if there's information that you're not seeing on there, we would love to hear that. So great. All right, our next poll question. It's always so fun to be able to do these poll questions and kind of get live responses. So our next poll question is, has today's webinar increased your understanding of the challenges faced by youth from foster care in applying to college? So feel free to start answering now. So we see a lot of agree, strongly agree, a lot of agree, which is great. That's what we're hoping for. And, I think this is a huge thanks again to Dr. Tremblay, who's here with us today, just, understanding all of the challenges, but also just all of the great resources that are available. All right, wonderful. And now we have our third poll question. And again, I just want to say thank you to all of our attendees out there who are listening to or who are responding to this. This gives us great feedback. The third question is, if you need to find information or resources about helping youth from foster care apply to college, would you know how? Out, and it looks like 100% of you are answering yes so far. Some are saying not sure, but most are saying yes. Wonderful, great. And our last poll question that we have for today: would you recommend this webinar to another professional, educator, or student? And again, we just want to say thank you to all of you for being on this webinar today. We love doing these. We love having our local experts come in and speak with all of you. It's a great way for us to share information and also to hear from you what questions are really burning in your communities. So it's looking like we have highly likely and likely. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. It's absolutely wonderful to hear your feedback, hear from you. And we're going to go ahead and hopefully close us out. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to you, Christopher, for coming today. It was just absolutely wonderful to have you. We're very fortunate to have such a great champion for our students from foster care. If you have any questions for the Fostering Success Michigan team, any questions about the webinar, want to follow up on anything, please feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us through our website, through our Google group, through our email, and questions for Dr. Tremblay here, you can send them directly to him. We can provide you that contact information. We look forward to seeing all of you at our next Toolkit webinar next month, and we're wishing you a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.